They laughed when you stopped talking. They thought the silence meant you had nothing left. No arguments, no power, no presence. Just empty. But what they didn't see, what they could never understand, is that silence isn't absence. It's control. While they were busy making noise, you were watching, learning, calculating every move, every weakness, every pattern they exposed without even realizing it. See, people fear what they can't read, and nothing is harder to read than a mind that chooses not to speak. Your silence made them comfortable at first, then curious, then uneasy, because deep down they know something is happening behind that calm exterior. Something they can't predict, can't manipulate, can't stop. They call it weakness because that's the only way they can cope with it. But silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. They think silence means you have nothing to say, that you've run out of words, out of confidence, out of relevance. They look at you standing there, calm and quiet, and they fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. Weak, lost, defeated. It makes them comfortable to believe that, because noise is the only language they understand. But silence isn't empty. It's deliberate. Every word you don't say is a decision. Every reaction you hold back is control tightening its grip. While they rush to speak, to prove, to defend, you step back. Not because you can't keep up, but because you don't need to. You're not playing their game. You're watching it unfold. People expose themselves when they think no one is paying attention. They reveal their fears, their insecurities, their intentions, all wrapped in careless words and impulsive reactions. And the quieter you become, the more they talk. They start explaining things you never asked about, justifying actions you never questioned, showing cracks they thought were hidden. That's the illusion of silence. They think you're giving them nothing, but in reality, they're giving you everything. Control doesn't always look loud. It doesn't need to dominate a room or overpower a conversation. Real control is subtle. It's knowing when to speak and choosing not to. It's feeling the urge to react and letting it pass. It's understanding that not every moment deserves your voice. Because once you speak, you reveal your position. You show your cards. You give people something to respond to, something to challenge, something to twist. But when you stay silent, you remain unreadable, untouchable in a way that frustrates them. They can argue with your words. They can attack your opinions. But they can't fight what they don't understand. And that's where the discomfort begins. At first, they ignore it. Then they notice it. Then they start to question it. Why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you defending yourself? Why aren't you playing along? The silence starts to echo in their minds, louder than anything you could have said, because silence forces people to confront themselves. Without your response to guide the situation, they're left alone with their own thoughts. And most people aren't comfortable there, so they push. They provoke. They try to pull you back into the noise, back into a place where they feel in control again. They want a reaction, any reaction, because that's how they measure power. If they can make you respond, they can feel like they've moved you, but you don't move. Not because you can't, but because you understand something they don't. Power isn't in constant expression. It's in restraint. Silence is where clarity forms. It's where emotions settle and intentions sharpen. It's where you decide what actually matters and what deserves to be ignored. And most of what people throw at you isn't worth the energy it takes to respond. They see silence as a gap. You see it as space. Space to think, to observe, to choose your next move without pressure, without distraction. And while they're busy trying to fill that space with noise, you're shaping it into something they can't predict. Most people react without thinking. It's almost automatic. A word triggers them, a look offends them, a moment challenges them, and they respond instantly. Loud, emotional, desperate to prove something. They think speed is power. They think the fastest response wins. But reaction is predictable. It follows patterns. Same tone, same energy, same outcome. You push them, they push back. You provoke them, they explode. It's a script they don't even realize they're following. And once you see the script, you can control the scene. Observation breaks that cycle. When you don't react, you create a pause. And in that pause, everything becomes visible. You notice the shift in their voice, the hesitation behind their confidence, the cracks in their logic. You see what they're really trying to do, not just what they're saying. Because words are rarely the truth. They're distractions, masks, performances designed to hide intention. People say what sounds right, but their behavior tells the real story. And behavior is something you can only understand if you're watching, not reacting. Reaction blinds you. It pulls you into the moment and locks your focus on defending yourself, proving your point, protecting your ego. You stop seeing clearly because you're too busy being involved. You become part of the chaos instead of understanding it. Observation keeps you outside of it. You don't rush to speak. You don't rush to judge. You let things unfold. And as they do, people reveal more than they ever intended. The longer you stay calm, the more they fill the silence with their own exposure. They start repeating themselves, contradicting themselves, showing exactly where they're unsure, exactly where they're trying too hard. And all of it happens because they think you're not doing anything. But you are. You're collecting information. Every detail, every inconsistency, every emotional shift. You're building a picture while they're busy performing. And by the time they realize it, you already understand the situation better than they do. That's what makes observation powerful. It turns time into an advantage. While they rush, you wait. While they guess, you know. While they react, you decide. And decision is always stronger than reaction, because reaction is driven by emotion. It's unstable, impulsive, easy to manipulate. Anyone can trigger a reaction if they know where to push. It doesn't take intelligence, just the right pressure. But observation requires control. It means holding back when everything in you wants to respond. It means choosing awareness over impulse. It means being comfortable with silence while others grow uncomfortable inside it. And that discomfort makes them careless. They start trying harder, talking more, revealing deeper intentions just to get something from you. A response, a sign, anything that proves they still have influence over you. But the more they try, the more they expose. Because they don't realize that every second, you're not reacting, you're learning. You're seeing how they operate under pressure, how they behave when they're unsure, how far they're willing to go just to get your attention. And once you see that, you don't need to react. You already understand how it ends. People trust what they can understand. Patterns make them comfortable. Predictability makes them feel in control. They like knowing how you think, how you react, what you'll say next. It gives them a sense of safety, a way to prepare, a way to stay one step ahead. So they study you. They watch how you respond under pressure, how you handle attention, how you deal with conflict. Every reaction you give becomes data. Every word you speak becomes a clue. Slowly, they build a version of you in their minds. Something they believe they can read. Something they believe they can manage. And once they think they understand you, they stop being careful. That's where mystery changes everything. When you don't reveal everything, when you don't respond the way they expect, when your actions don't follow their assumptions, the pattern breaks. And the moment the pattern breaks, their control disappears with it, because confusion creates distance. They start second-guessing themselves. Was that intentional? Are you aware of what they're doing? Did you see something they tried to hide? Questions begin to replace certainty, and certainty is what they depend on. Mystery forces them into unfamiliar territory. They can't predict your next move. They can't prepare for your reaction. They don't know if you're passive or calculating, unaware or fully in control. And that uncertainty makes them cautious. People act differently when they're unsure. They hesitate. They hold back. They start analyzing you instead of focusing on themselves. Their energy shifts from action to speculation. And while they're trying to figure you out, you're already steps ahead without even moving, because you're not giving them anything fixed to work with. No consistent reaction, no obvious weakness, no clear intention they can point to. Just fragments, small glimpses that never fully connect into something solid, enough to keep them thinking, but never enough to give them clarity. And clarity is what removes fear. Without it, they create their own stories. They imagine possibilities, outcomes, meanings that may not even exist, and those imagined versions of you become more powerful than anything you could openly show. That's the quiet advantage of mystery. You don't have to prove strength when people already feel uncertain around you. You don't have to defend yourself when they're too busy trying to understand you. Your presence becomes something they can't define, and anything undefined feels bigger than it actually is. They'll test you at first. Small attempts to provoke a reaction. Subtle moves to see if you follow the usual script. They want confirmation, something that brings you back into a pattern they recognize. But when that confirmation never comes, the discomfort grows. Because now it's not about controlling you anymore. It's about figuring out what you are. And the less they understand, the more careful they become. Their words change. Their tone shifts. Their confidence starts to carry hesitation underneath it. Not because you've done anything obvious, but because you haven't. You've removed the predictability they rely on. And without predictability, they lose the ability to plan against you. Every move becomes a guess. Every interaction becomes uncertain. That's where power shifts. Not through force, not through dominance, but through absence of clarity. Through the simple choice of not revealing everything, not explaining everything, not reacting in ways that make you easy to define. Because once people can't define you, they can't control you. And when they can't control you, they start questioning themselves instead of you. They become slower, more cautious, more aware of every step they take around you. Not because you demanded it, but because they don't know what happens if they don't. Most people wear their emotions on the surface. You can see it in their eyes, hear it in their voice, feel it in the way they react. Anger spikes, excitement leaks out, fear hides badly behind forced confidence. It's all there, unfiltered, immediate, easy to read. And because it's easy to read, it's easy to use. All it takes is the right word, the right pressure, the right moment, and they lose control. They say things they didn't plan to say, make decisions they didn't think through, expose parts of themselves they were trying to protect. They believe they're expressing strength, but what they're really doing is handing over control. Emotion without discipline is a weakness people mistake for honesty. It feels real, it feels powerful, but it's unstable. It shifts too quickly, reacts too easily, and once it's triggered, it takes over everything else. Logic fades, awareness narrows, and suddenly the situation isn't about understanding anymore. It's about winning, proving, reacting. That's where mistakes are made. Because when emotion leads, control disappears. You stop choosing your actions and start chasing your feelings. Every move becomes a response instead of a decision. And responses can be predicted, guided, manipulated by anyone who knows where to apply pressure. But discipline changes the structure completely. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't let what you feel decide what you do. There's a gap between the trigger and the reaction, and in that gap is control. The ability to pause, to observe, to decide whether the moment deserves your energy or your silence. Most people never create that gap. They move from feeling to reacting in an instant. No filter, no control, no awareness of what they're revealing in the process. And the more intense the emotion, the faster that reaction comes. Discipline slows everything down. It gives you space to see the situation for what it is, not what it feels like in the moment. It lets you recognize when someone is trying to provoke you, when they're testing your limits, when they're waiting for you to lose control so they can gain it. And when you don't react the way they expect, it throws them off. They push harder, trying to break that control. They raise their voice, change their tone, shift their approach. Not because they're confident, but because they're frustrated. They're used to reactions. They depend on them, but you stay steady. No sudden shifts, no visible cracks, no emotional spikes they can grab onto. Just consistency, calm, and control. And that consistency becomes unsettling. Because now the dynamic has changed. They're reacting, and you're not. They're trying to influence, and nothing is moving. Their usual methods stop working. Their confidence starts to rely on guesswork, and the control they thought they had begins to slip. Emotional discipline doesn't make you cold. It makes you precise. Every word you choose to say has intention. Every action you take has direction. Nothing is wasted on impulse or driven by momentary feeling. And that precision makes you harder to challenge, harder to read, harder to affect. Because there's nothing loose to pull on. No obvious trigger, no visible weakness, no easy way in. Just a controlled presence that doesn't shift under pressure. doesn't react under provocation, doesn't break under intensity, and people notice that. Even if they don't understand it, they feel it. The difference between someone who is controlled by emotion and someone who controls it. One is loud, reactive, predictable. The other is quiet, steady, and impossible to move without permission. And that difference is where real strength exists. People need to believe they understand you. It gives them comfort, a sense of control, a way to measure where they stand. So they look at you, listen to you, and make a quick judgment: strong, weak, smart, irrelevant. They don't take long, and they don't question it. Once they've decided, they settle into that belief like it's fact. And most of the time, they want to believe you're less than what you are. It makes things easier for them. If you're not a threat, they don't have to be careful. If you're not capable, they don't have to watch you closely. They can relax, drop their guard, speak freely, act without thinking. That's the advantage. Underestimation creates space. Space where you're not being analyzed, not being challenged, not being treated like someone who could disrupt anything. You become background noise in their minds, something they don't feel the need to manage. And when people stop managing you, they start exposing themselves. They reveal plans they wouldn't normally reveal. They speak openly about intentions they would usually hide. They move without caution, without awareness, without the sense that anyone is paying attention to what they're doing. Because in their mind, you don't matter enough to notice. That assumption becomes their weakness. While they're busy overlooking you, you're watching everything. Every detail, every pattern, every shift in behavior. You're learning how they think, how they act under pressure, how they handle confidence, and how they handle doubt. And the more they underestimate you, the more they show. It's a strange kind of blindness. Not forced, not accidental, but chosen. They see what they want to see, not what's actually there. And once that belief settles in, it's hard for them to break out of it. Even when signs start to appear, they'll notice small things at first, a moment where you respond differently than expected. A situation where you handle something better than they assumed you could. But instead of questioning their judgment, they ignore it. They protect their assumption. Because admitting they were wrong means admitting they missed something. And most people would rather stay comfortable than be accurate. So they double down. They keep treating you the same way, keep underestimating, keep overlooking. And every time they do, they give you more room to operate without resistance. That's where things shift. Because you're not trying to prove them wrong. You're not stepping forward, demanding recognition, forcing them to see what they missed. That would only bring attention back to you, break the illusion, make them cautious again. Instead, you let them stay comfortable. You let them believe what they want, think what they want, underestimate as much as they need. Because the longer they stay in that mindset, the deeper they commit to it. And the deeper they commit, the harder it is for them to react when reality changes. When the moment comes, it doesn't feel gradual to them. It feels sudden, unexpected, like something shifted without warning. But nothing actually changed in that moment. You were always capable. They just chose not to see it. And now they're forced to face a version of you they never prepared for. A version they didn't study, didn't predict, didn't consider a possibility. And because of that, they don't know how to respond. Their confidence hesitates. Their reactions slow down. Their certainty turns into doubt. All because they believed something that was never true. Underestimation doesn't limit you. It limits them. It traps them in a false understanding, a narrow view that blinds them to what's really happening. And while they stay inside that illusion, you move freely outside of it, untouched by their expectations, unaffected by their judgments, and by the time they realize the mistake, they're already behind. Noise feels powerful. It fills the room, demands attention, creates the illusion of control. People raise their voices, stack their words, push their opinions forward as if volume alone can define truth. And for a moment, it works. It looks dominant. It sounds convincing. It draws focus. But noise fades quickly. The louder it is, the faster it burns out. It relies on constant energy, constant reinforcement, constant reaction. Without that, it collapses into nothing. And most people don't realize they're trapped in that cycle, always needing to speak, always needing to respond, always needing to prove. Because without noise, they feel invisible. They think silence makes them smaller, so they compensate with volume. They talk more, react faster, insert themselves into every moment just to stay relevant. But in doing that, they lose precision. Their words become scattered, their intentions unclear, their actions driven by urgency instead of direction. That's where strategy separates itself. Strategy doesn't rush. It doesn't depend on being seen or heard in every moment. It chooses when to appear, when to act, when to speak. And that choice is what gives it weight. Because when something is rare, it becomes valuable. When you don't speak often, your words carry more impact. When you don't act impulsively, your actions feel intentional. People start paying attention, not because you're loud, but because you're selective. They begin to notice the pattern. You don't respond to everything. You don't engage in every conflict. You don't chase attention or try to dominate every conversation. And that restraint creates a different kind of presence, one that isn't built on noise, but on timing. Timing is where strategy lives. Saying the right thing at the wrong time weakens it. Acting too early exposes it. Acting too late wastes it. But when timing is precise, even the smallest move can shift everything. And precision only comes from patience. While others are busy reacting, you're waiting. Not passively, but deliberately. You're watching the situation unfold, letting people reveal themselves, letting the moment develop into something clear. You're not rushing to be part of it. You're deciding how and when to enter it. That decision makes all the difference, because when you finally act, it doesn't feel random. It feels calculated, focused, directed at exactly what matters, nothing wasted, nothing unnecessary. And that's what makes it effective. Noise tries to overwhelm. Strategy targets. Noise spreads energy everywhere. Strategy concentrates it in one place. One move, one statement, one action that lands exactly where it needs to, without warning, without build-up, without giving anyone time to prepare. And preparation is what people rely on. When they hear noise, they get ready. They defend, they counter, they respond. But strategy doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give signals or warnings. It appears when it's already in motion. That's why it's harder to stop. By the time people recognize it, it's already taken effect. The shift has happened. The moment has passed. And all that's left is reaction. But reaction comes too late because strategy isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about being the most deliberate one. Every step has a purpose. Every word has direction. Every action is chosen, not triggered. And that level of control makes you unpredictable in a different way. Not chaotic, but precise in a way others can't follow. They try to match it with noise. More words, more reactions, more effort to regain control. But noise can't compete with something that isn't playing the same game. Because while they're focused on being heard, you're focused on being effective. And effectiveness doesn't need an audience.